No one is talking about this one sling that can force your feet to point out like a duck. And that's why I'm not only going to be showing you what this sling is, I'm also going to be showing you how to work on it so you can start fixing your duck feet. Adam here from trainingmassage.com. And that one sling I'm talking about is called the spiral line, which is a fascia line that basically wraps around the bottom of the foot and goes up the body. But to understand how this is creating your duck feet, let's take a look at one of these. So what you're seeing on screen is a little girl learning how to control her horse and turn it. And she's able to do this by simply pulling on the reins that's attached to the head. So if she pulls on the right rein, then the horse is going to turn to the right, and the same thing happens if she pulls on the left side. And just like how this little girl is able to control the head of the horse by simply pulling on the reins, you can control how the feet are positioned by simply pulling on those spiral lines. And the spiral line goes all the way up and around the body, but for us, we want to focus on the lower portion specifically. The spiral line is going to start off on that TFL and then run straight into the IT band, where it then connects fascially into the anterior tibularis. From there, that anterior tibularis wraps around and goes underneath the bottom of the foot, where it can then meet up with the other side, which is the fibularis muscle. From here, that fibularis is going to run straight up again the body and go into the bicep femoris, which is the lateral hamstring. And from there, it continues into the glutes and up the rest of the body. And it's that connection underneath the foot between the fibularis and the anterior tibularis where we can see that sling in play here. And this is the sling I'm talking about that can create your duck feet. If I create more tension on the outside of the spiral line, then what's going to end up happening is it's going to pull the feet outwards and create eversion. And the same thing is going to happen if I create tension on the inside, which is going to create inversion. Now, do you see how the spiral line can create duck feet? If there is too much tension on that outside line, specifically in that fibularis and the bicep femoris, then the feet are going to follow it, which then creates your duck feet. Now, to be clear here, eversion is technically not duck feet, but your ankle is going to follow that eversion with some pronation, which is then going to create your duck feet. So what basically needs to happen here is we need to first release the tension on the outside, which is then creating that eversion. Once we release that tension, the next step is going to be to lengthen out that tension line, because it's going to make the third step 10 times easier, which is to create tension on the other side of that sling, which is going to be the anterior tibularis, in order to fight off that eversion. So we're basically releasing the tight side, stretching it, and then training the other side to prevent it from creating more eversion. Now, since the first step is to release the tension, we're going to be starting things off by sub-massaging the bicep femoris, which is the lateral hamstring. Start things off by warming up the muscle by rolling back and forth on the muscle for 1 minute. You can target the lateral hamstring by rotating your leg outwards or by moving your massage tool to the outside hamstring. The goal here is to not only roll out the entire muscle to help it warm up, but you're also looking for the most tender spots you can find for the future self-massage techniques. Now, after you're done warming up that muscle, go back to those tender spots you found so we can perform what's called a pin and stretch. Now, it is best to do this technique in a sitting position because now you can flex your entire leg. But if you are stuck on the floor, you can do this by elevating the hamstring you're working on with a yoga block or books, which gives you enough room to flex the leg a little bit. And once you find the tender spots, pin it down and hold that pressure as you flex and extend your leg. Now, this is going to help loosen the fascia in those areas you're working on, which is why it's important to target the areas that feel stuck or tender. Make sure to perform a pin and stretch for roughly 1 to 2 minutes. Now, the next muscle you're going to be releasing is going to be the fibularis, which is the lateral calf muscle. Once again, start things off by warming up the muscle with a foam roller for 1 minute. Now, from here, perform deep stripping techniques using your hands or knuckles. Start at the top of the muscle and slowly strip down it, applying as much pressure as you can tolerate. Hit not only the top of the muscle, but also the edges of it as well to really loosen it up. Now, the goal here is to move nice and slow since you are supposed to be deep within the muscle and the fascia, which may get stuck and can take some time to move. Make sure to perform this technique for 2 minutes on each side. Now once you're done releasing these muscles, the next step is to stretch the muscles and the fascia around it. And to start things off, we're going to be stretching out that lateral hamstring. To stretch this muscle, you can perform any kind of regular stretch you want for the hamstrings as long as you are rotating the leg inward to help target the lateral hamstring. Another tip here is to make sure your support foot is also pointed straight. This is going to help straighten the hips, which in turn will help stretch out your hamstrings. Make sure to stretch this muscle out for 3 sets of 1 minute each. You have to remember that you're not only stretching out the muscles here, but you're also stretching out the fascia around it, which takes a lot longer to actually elongate. Now to stretch out your fibularis, make sure your toes are pointing inward and your feet are inverted, which is basically the opposite of what's already happening. Now from here, hinge back while keeping your legs straight and you will begin to feel a good stretch on the outside calf muscle. Go ahead and hold this stretch for another 3 sets for 1 minute each set. So now that there's less tension on the outside spiral line, we can now try to correct it by creating more tension on the inside. And we can start off by strengthening the anterior tibularis. To train this muscle, place one foot on top of an elevated surface with the toes extended over the edge. Now use either a band or a weight to create resistance going towards the ground so you can now contract the muscle with some resistance. Your goal here is to perform 3 sets for 20 reps going at a controlled pace. Now the next muscle you want to fire up is actually going to be that TFL, and we're going to be doing this by training the hip flexors. Sticking to a similar setup, what you want to do is have some resistance going towards the ground as you pull your knee up towards your hips. You can do this by having some weight attached to your ankles. You can do this with a band on top of your knee, or you can do this by holding your anterior tibularis in an isometric contraction to hold the weight as you perform your exercise. You should be trying to perform this one, by the way. Regardless of which exercise you choose, once again, your goal here is to perform 3 sets of 20 reps at a controlled pace. And now that you've worked all the areas by themselves, we can now try to incorporate it with the rest of the body by performing forward lunges. The idea here is to focus on keeping your feet pointed straight and to make sure your knees are tracking over your toes as you perform this exercise. Start off with bodyweight exercises before you move up to using some weights. Perform this exercise for another 3 sets of 12 to 20 reps. Now that you're done working on your duck feet, it's time to work on your knees, which you can do by clicking on the video in the top right corner.